Real estate scams changed American history. These are the greatest fraudulent empires, where entire cities existed only on paper and millions of dollars vanished into thin air. From the Arctic shores of Greenland to the deserts of California, con artists have been selling dreams that never existed for over 1,000 years. The story begins not in America, but in Iceland in 982 AD, when a man named Erik the Red was exiled for murder. Rather than disappearing into obscurity, Erik sailed northwest to a frozen wasteland and did something brilliant in its audacity. He named it Greenland. Not because it was green, but because he wanted to trick settlers into believing they were buying passage to a fertile paradise. The scam worked perfectly. Hundreds of people sold everything they owned for a chance at this promised land, only to arrive at an Arctic hellscape where most would die within months. Erik the Red had accidentally created the blueprint for every land scam that would follow. Promise something spectacular, collect the money up front, and let reality sort itself out later. When Europeans arrived in America, they brought this tradition with them. By the 1790s, land speculation had become a national obsession. Harvard economist Edward Glaeser noted that America has always been a nation of real estate speculators, attracting everyone from the mighty, like George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, to the modest, like small farmers who were buying and selling land parcels at breakneck speed. The first truly massive American land fraud exploded in Georgia in 1795. Governor George Matthews signed the Yazoo Act, selling 40 million acres of what is now Alabama and Mississippi for just $500,000. They were selling land the size of Florida for 13 cents per acre. The scandal was so outrageous that angry citizens burned the legislation in public ceremonies. But here is the twist. When Georgia tried to void these fraudulent sales, the Supreme Court ruled in Fletcher versus Peck that the contracts were legally binding. Fraud or not, a deal was a deal. This decision had devastating consequences that rippled through American history. It established the legal principle that only the federal government could purchase Native American lands, effectively creating a monopoly that the United States would use to systematically drive out tribes. What began as a simple real estate scam became the legal foundation for one of the largest cases of land fraud in human history. But individual con artists were just getting started. In 1820, a Scottish soldier named Gregor MacGregor pulled off perhaps the most audacious land scam ever attempted. MacGregor convinced a native king along Central America's Mosquito Coast to grant him 8 million acres of territory. He then returned to London and began promoting this land as the country of Poyais, complete with detailed maps, currency, and government positions for sale. MacGregor's marketing was absolutely genius. He claimed Poyais had fertile soil, friendly natives, and vast mineral wealth. He sold government bonds worth over $1 billion in today's currency, and convinced London banks to back his Poyaisian securities. Between 1822 and 1823, hundreds of people departed England and Scotland for this promised land, bringing tools, supplies, and dreams of prosperity. What they found was uninhabitable swampland. Over 150 people died from disease and starvation. Those who survived had to be rescued by British naval vessels. Yet when the survivors returned to London, something bizarre happened. Instead of denouncing MacGregor, they defended him. They marched into the London government offices and signed affidavits stating that MacGregor had done nothing wrong. The con artist had been so convincing that his victims continued believing in Poyais even after nearly dying there. MacGregor's scheme was so massive it contributed to the Panic of 1825, triggering a financial crisis that spread across Britain. In the 1880s, James Addison Revis attempted to claim ownership of over 18,600 square miles of Arizona and New Mexico territory through forged Spanish land grants. Following the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848, which transferred vast Mexican territories to the United States, the complex system of Spanish land grants created perfect opportunities for fraud. Revis called himself the Baron of Arizona and spent years creating an elaborate fake history, complete with falsified documents and Spanish archives and a fictitious noble bloodline. The Baron collected over $5 million from residents and businesses throughout his claimed territory. Railroad companies, mining operations, and even local governments paid him for the right to exist on his land. The scam unraveled when government investigator Royal Johnson exposed the documents as forgeries in 1889. Rivas was sentenced to 2 years in prison, but not before his story inspired the 1950 Vincent Price movie, The Baron of Arizona. The most famous fraudster in American history, Charles Ponzi, also tried his hand at real estate. After his original pyramid scheme collapsed in 1920, Ponzi moved to Florida and founded the Charpon Land Syndicate. He purchased 100 acres of swampland east of Jacksonville for $16 per acre, then subdivided each acre into 23 plots and sold them for $10 each, advertising the land as prime Florida real estate. He promised investors 200% returns in 60 days. When authorities closed in, Ponzi staged his own death, leaving clothes and a suicide note on a Florida beach. But instead of drowning, he had shaved his head, grown a mustache, and taken a job as a dishwasher on an Italian freighter. The dramatic fake suicide was typical Ponzi, always the showman even when caught. Florida became the epicenter of American land fraud during the 1920s. Visionaries like D.P. Davis transformed swampland into developments like Davis Islands near Tampa, selling dreams of waterfront living. Speculative fever created enough subdivided lots within 10 miles of Miami to accommodate 2 million people. One development called Poinciana sold nearly 9,000 lots in the Everglades in 1925 and 1926, despite being mostly underwater. The 1950s and the 1960s brought what experts call Florida's golden age of land scams, creating vacant subdivisions that still dot the landscape today. But the most elaborate modern land scam began in 1958, when sociologist Nat Mendelsohn purchased 80,000 acres of California desert with dreams of creating a city to rival Los Angeles. California City was going to be a master-planned community with everything a growing family could want. Mendelsohn built hundreds of miles of roads through empty desert, creating a massive grid of streets with names like Cadillac Boulevard, Chrysler Drive, and Yale Avenue. He later attempted similar schemes with Cochiti Lake in New Mexico, targeting Native American lands. His marketing campaign was relentless. Mendelsohn sold 32,000 plots of land to eager buyers, netting over $100 million by 1969. Families across America bought lots sight unseen, imagining their future homes in this promised desert paradise. But here's the thing, Mendelsohn never lived in California City himself. He had perfected what the 1971 Nader's Raiders report called the art of turning desert dust into gold, but only for himself. The reality was sobering. California City was incorporated in 1965, but consisted mainly of empty streets carved into barren desert. In 1969, Mendelsohn sold his company to Great Western United Corporation for $27.4 million in stock and walked away. An estimated 73,000 investors collectively lost hundreds of millions of dollars. The Federal Trade Commission eventually reached a settlement in 1977, providing partial refunds from a $4 million pool to over 14,000 landowners, the largest FTC settlement to date. Today, California City still exists as a bizarre testament to ambitious planning and broken dreams. It is California's third largest municipality by area, right behind Los Angeles and San Diego. But most of it remains empty desert crossed by hundreds of miles of unused roads. About 14,000 people live in the developed western section, while the eastern sector remains a ghost grid etched across the desert surface. The tradition continues in new forms. The FBI reports a 500% increase in vacant land fraud over the last 4 years. Modern scammers use fake IP addresses and spoofed phone numbers to impersonate property owners, and they sell land they do not actually own to unsuspecting buyers. The schemes target rural western properties, with scammers often operating from outside the continental United States. Even map makers got into the act of creating fictional places. Throughout the 20th century, cartographers inserted fake towns called paper towns into their maps as copyright traps. If these phantom settlements appeared on a competitor's map, it proved they had stolen the original work. One such fake town, Agloe, New York, was created in the 1920s by General Drafting Company. But something unprecedented happened. Agloe became real. When someone built the Agloe General Store at the fictional location, the town briefly existed in reality before fading back into cartographic obscurity. Decades later, author John Green featured Agloe in his novel Paper Towns, introducing a new generation to the concept of fictional places that sometimes become real. From Erik the Red's icy deception to modern internet fraud, the American dream of land ownership has created an endless supply of victims for creative con artists. These scams reveal something fundamental about human nature, our willingness to believe in promises of a better future, even when those promises exist only on paper. In America, it seems, hope itself has always been the most valuable real estate of all.